So NBC News really outdid themselves in their coverage of AOC's very brief speech at the DNC. Of course, we've been covering here the fact that, progressives have been largely left out of the entire DNC. Of course, they let Bernie speak. They kind of had to. There'd be like an uprising if they didn't. There was debate over whether AOC would even get to speak at all. They ended up giving her 60 seconds, and not even to make the case for Biden, but to second the nomination for Bernie Sanders, which is an entirely conventional role. Yeah. Every convention, this is what you do. You have the different candidates up there.
If you earn more than 300 delegates, you get an official nomination.
That's the way that works. Okay, so here is how NBC News framed that situation. This is a tweet. In one of the shortest speeches of the DNC, Representative Ocasio-Cortez did not endorse Joe Biden. Quote, "I hereby second the nomination of Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont for President of the United States of America." This went along with an accompanying piece that framed it very much in the same way, as if AOC had intentionally snubbed Joe Biden. I mean, it looks very much like an attempt to frame this whole narrative about oh, the left is so terrible and they're the reason why Democrats are going to lose to Trump. AOC very rightfully called them out, saying, "So, NBC News, how are you going to fix the incredible amount of damage and misinformation that you're now responsible for because a 1:15 a.m. tweet to slip under the radar after blowing up a totally false and divisive narrative across networks is not it?" I mean, it's just insane that they actually flipped the story completely on its head.
Yeah.
The real story here is Biden and the entire Democratic establishment basically giving progressives the middle finger at this DNC.
And
right?
saying, basically, AOC, we don't want your support.
We don't want to hear you make the case.
Right.
You can have this limited role of seconding the nomination for Bernie Sanders. That's what you can do. She did that. She did, to me, it wasn't that incredible of a speech, but whatever, she did that. She congratulated Joe Biden on Twitter, and yet they want to feed this narrative that she snubbed Biden versus what is completely the opposite of the case, that she actually was snubbed, and progressives in the left in general snubbed by this entire convention.
Yeah, no, I think that is the real story. And also, of course, it's just ginning up this fake outrage over something which is just not even happening. And that's, I think, the real story here to me is the complete political illiteracy of the people who are supposed to tell you about politics. Yes. How does NBC News not understand that it was a nomination speech for Bernie Sanders and it had nothing to do with Biden and that it was all pre-orchestrated and much of that?
Why is AOC having to explain that to you after the fact?
No, I mean, again, and it just goes to show that if they see a little thing, which is even if it's not true, and they can try to latch onto in order to make a broader point like anti-Republican or anti-progressive, and this, they will run with it every day of the week. Mm-hmm. And then their quiet little apology comes hours and hours later after all the suburban wine moms of America have been like, oh, this AOC, blah, blah. That's what they do. They've run this playbook every single time.
Yes, they absolutely do. And so that's the truth. It's not that they were actually confused about the political process here, don't understand how nominating a candidate works. And AOC pointed out in another tweet, she was like, "We told you in advance that this was the role in the procedure that I was going to be playing. You knew, just as we did, you knew what the timing was going to be, right. That I only had a minute to speak. That was a whole thing. That was a whole part of the political conversation." They're not confused about that. They just wanted to frame it in this way to make AOC look as bad as possible. That's the reality. AOC, and by extension, of course, the left in the party, they wanted to make them look as bad as possible. So that's the framing that they went with.
Congratulations.
Way to go, guys. More rising for you after this.